in terms of competencies. So this is a question which the new education policy has raised. That does your education mean anything concretely? Can you say with confidence that I have this degree, therefore I can do X, Y, Z things? So if I have done journalism, can I actually join and work on the field on the first day of graduating? If I have done a B.Ed, can I claim to be a competent teacher on the first day of joining the school? Are my skills to be trusted? So that has been an issue. Okay. So 3 things which are a big challenge for our system is the scale. I told you, right? 4 crore students, a population of an entire country. Our government has to manage a higher education system in that proportion. So maintaining quality is a big challenge. Maintaining finances is a big challenge. Regulating quality is a big challenge. Okay. So what the new education policy has kind of highlighted, I'm not sure if you can see it on your screens, but at the heart of the discussion is this idea of a skilled nation. This idea that what India needs or what India's economy needs right now is to have trust and faith that our graduates are going to contribute to the Indian economy in a meaningful way. You would have heard about Skill India program or Digital India program, now Viksit Bharat. All of these schemes are part of kind of emphasizing this. It talks about knowledge economy, innovation, not just in what students do, but also in terms of how colleges or universities are run, how they organize their curriculum. When I was in college in early 2000s doing physics, there was a big joke which would go around, which was that the physics textbook that my seniors had read was the same one as their parents 30 years before had also read. Syllabus could not change for 30 long years. And my batch was the first or second batch in university, which had a different kind of syllabus, which reflected what was going on in the world of physics at that time. So the government's approach to reform is also that how do you create institutions which can adapt to the changes that are taking place so rapidly around us. One big kind of, the new education policy came out in 2020. And we can't forget 2020 ever. We would want to, but it was the pandemic year, correct? Yeah. And the pandemic year changed so many things for so many people in difficult ways. But it definitely changed something about higher education. The direction which the government wanted colleges to take to shift towards technology-enabled teaching learning, which philosophy of teaching learning in colleges amongst teachers would not kind of see eye to eye. Pandemic founded creative individuals who have 21st century capabilities. And these 21st century capabilities, as we know now, are capacity to adapt to new techniques and technologies. Even in fields like medicine, we know that artificial intelligence is going to change the way medicine is practiced. A lot of things which, tertiary level medical staff or primary level medical caregivers used to be performing, a lot of that role is going to be taken up by artificial intelligence. A lot of jobs in banking sector, in chartered accountancy are going to be impacted by artificial intelligence. So you are paying money to learn certain disciplines, but that investment may not be useful because the skills you are learning right now may be performed by a bot, a chat GPT, much better than you can ever do, right? And you can make mistakes. The software program will not make a mistake. So what will you learn then? What will you do then, right? So that's a question which the government faces right now, and that's something which institutions and teachers face today. That how do we reskill? How do we prepare you? How do we organize teaching learning in our classrooms that it's not dependent upon knowledge A, knowledge B, knowledge C. It's not dependent upon information. So it's a question which is pushing universities think about curriculum, the term that you use interchangeably for syllabus. What should you be doing in classrooms? Things which maybe you are doing on the side, learning on your own through YouTube, could it be integrated with how you learn to do different things inside your own classrooms? So that's a question which faces all of us together. So 21st century skills and enabling all of us to develop that capacity that if reskilling is required at the age of 30, at the age of 35, we don't find ourselves out of sync. We don't find it too difficult. We are able to relearn as we progress in our jobs. So that's the mantra which NAB is kind of trying to highlight. Think about futures. And it's not one singular future, it is a collective futures. I don't think these recommendations are relevant for us to talk about, but there is, from the point of view of funding, that aspect maybe I can touch upon and talk about it with you, that earlier, when our higher education system was completely public, government funded, that is till the year 2000, the only kind of private initiative were through privately funded colleges or self-financing courses. At that time, central government put a lot of its money behind central institutions. IITs, IIMs, they were the blue-eyed child, central universities. And state universities, at least post-1975, were given a step-sisterly treatment. They were underfunded, they were ignored, and the same story continues even today. Bulk of the funding which the center has goes to improving institutions which will show up in global rankings. And state and institutions are seen as teaching shops. They will churn out or certification places. So that's going to continue more. Or the responsibility of taking care of undergraduates is going to lie more and more on the private sector. Okay? And mind you, it's not a small number. 80% of that 4 crore are doing some form of BA in the country right now. It's 80%. So out of that 80%, close to 70%, close to 65-70% is taken care by government institutions as of now. So that number is going to decrease because the expansion is going to be through autonomous colleges, private colleges or university like yours. There is a lot of emphasis, and I spoke about it, which they call liberal undergraduate education. That even if it's a vocational program you're doing, you should have opportunities for engaging with broad liberal disciplines, or think about the nature of human existence or the questions of what is politics, what is state, and so forth. So something which they kind of are reinforcing is just classroom education will not be meaningful education. You will need to integrate internships in a meaningful way. While you are in colleges, you should have exposure to the world of work. So 6 months to 1 year, anywhere 2 semesters worth of training in an industry context or relevant work context. Government has also done a very kind of radical move to say that 4-year undergraduate degree will be the norm in the country, which actually implies that you could exit from the system after doing a diploma in 2 years or in 3 years, but if you hope to do higher education, you will need to do the 4-year undergraduate degree, in which you will do research. So that is something which has been brought in as part of the liberal undergraduate vision. Having exposure to the world of work, having exposure to the world of research. Like as an undergrad student, your education is not meaningful unless you acquire problem-solving skills, unless you learn to develop research thinking. Okay. Simultaneous to that are examination reforms which NEP has proposed. That all of it sounds very nice. That okay, go and do internships, go and be in the field. Right? But how do you assess things like this? Or to say that, okay, pen and paper tests don't actually test your understanding of issues. Or pen and paper tests restrict your understanding to only very specific kinds of issues, things that you can recall, right? But in the real world, you have to constantly be able to apply your knowledge, and that is only what is counted as real learning. So, with respect to assessments, it's saying that you can't just change syllabus, you have to change how you evaluate students also. So things like you did today, presenting or introducing the conference, being part of the collegiate life in a meaningful way, all of these things, how can they be meaningfully part of how core dead subjects are taught to you or how they are made alive for you? That's a big concern. So a lot of funding, if you see on your screen, from the government side is going to be taken away from undergraduate education segment and going to be put in what the government now calls as the research ecosystem and internationalization. India is one of the highest exporting countries. I think we have left China behind. We send our students out and we add to other countries' economy, particularly United States. We are a major source of revenue. Students like you, again thinking about better social prospects, better future, kind of move towards studying abroad. So that's an area which Government of India is working towards, how to create internationalization experience at home. So inviting foreign universities to open their branch campus in India. That is something which has started last year onwards. And 2 Australian universities have been invited to do this. So it requires infrastructure augmentation, okay? So capital investment. Countrywide, if I can give you that one small information, you may not remember, but we have promised since independence 6% of our budget, GDP to education. We have reached at most 2.9%, okay? And in higher education, we are spending close to 0.68%, where globally governments spend close to 2% on their higher education system. So even now, government's money will not come to you, undergrads. It is going to move towards strengthening research ecosystem in the country. Finally, the last major emphasis of new education policy for higher education is that, we remember the first figure I showed you, 28% of young people enrolled in higher education. Government wants to make that into 50% in the next 11 years. So, and we said economies of scale, economies of cost are very difficult to maintain quality at that level. So what the state has proposed is that right now, about 11% of that 4 crore figure is through open and distance learning, collegiate education, non-collegiate education, or correspondence as we call it. So what the state plans to do is that bulk of this expansion from 4 crore to 8 crore is going to happen through distance learning. Okay? Distance learning not in the usual mode, but because we are living in a digital India kind of a phase, so government sees a huge potential in EdTech. EdTech, the new boom-up startup kind of ecosystem, where a lot of young people like you are investing into developing platforms for bringing education to marginalized, but also bringing education for profit. I don't know if you studied science in school, and you know about Alak Pandey, physics wala. You know it, right? The person has become an overnight millionaire because of his startup, physics wala. So government is also looking at these platforms that they seem to be more efficient. It's very difficult to monitor, set up buildings, have guards, have technicians, have teachers who come at a particular time, and if God forbid university happens to be in rural area, then you will not find any academic willingly wanting to relocate. Okay? So government is saying that with all of these infrastructure issues and development issues, maybe educational infrastructure can be developed in a digital platform through MOOCs, through digital economy. So that's the new direction of change or reforms that is going to happen in higher education, and that's the direction which the state seems to be taking. So they are encouraging you to be entrepreneurs. They are encouraging you to see physics wala as a role model. They are the government for jobs. Don't look up to the government for jobs. Look at the new innovation sector for thinking about your future and also thinking about the country's future. So this is the perspective which the new education policy takes. It doesn't say it in these many words, but that is the meaning you can actually infer or take out from it. So the last slide to conclude the discussion or talk today, and if you have questions or observations, I can take them, is that all of these directions which the government is taking and has valid reasons also to justify, put up before us problems of 3 E's of is the promise of efficiency to be taken at face value? Will the education, government funding on education be better done or will be more efficient if it's done through privatization or it is done through digital platforms? Can we be guaranteed of excellence through startups, through these kind of innovations? What will happen to equity? What will happen to equality? As the government puts money on international branch campuses, which are not going to be free, they are going to charge you in dollars. They are going to again not put back money in Indian economy, but they will cut down the cost of the Indian elites for their dream for higher education abroad. Okay, so if that is not going to benefit the ordinary person, the masses, then is it justified? Is it just? So we have to think about expansion through private enterprise versus the idea of higher education as a public good, which everybody should have access to. It doesn't matter which socio-economic background they come from. We have to be concerned about the shifting emphasis in policy from investment on institutional quality versus investment on assessing quality. So that's also a shift which has happened. Instead of government committing funds to improve quality of colleges or institutions, government is actually funding institutions which will evaluate you. So when the first slide, internal quality assurance cell. So this IQAC is part of a way of documenting what you're doing is quality or not. So a lot of money is spent on IQAC, a lot of money is spent on bodies like NAC, which will come and test you whether you're doing okay or not. So indirectly, government is funding higher education. So like you buy Pantene versus, I don't know, Head and Shoulders. Like these are consumer goods, right? So we're going to think about education also in these categories. This university versus that. What is the best deal that I'm getting? So that is the risk that we are running into. That when we convert education or higher education into a market, are we going to see students like you as learners who worship the idea of the Guru Shishya Parampara, or are you going to be the consumers who demand accountability from your teachers? So that's something which is not a settled debate. Yeah. So I think I can conclude my talk today on that aspect, that I hope that as you progress through your learning experience in university, you wake up to the question of political in education and read through policies not just as prescriptive text, but also as texts which are defining the future or representing the current thinking, political thinking about our future. So, thank you so much. So, I'll be happy to take any questions if there are or observations. Sorry if I bored you a lot, but this is my bread and butter. I research on higher education policy and I teach that. So I thought, even though you're not, you're not necessarily thinking about it right now, but at some point you will. Any experience you would want to share? tell me one thing. If you read or open your newspaper and you read about education minister, he's the least, he or she. Will you open and you will read what they are saying? I hope you do. Yeah, it's going to matter in the long run for your careers. So I hope you pay attention and I hope you remember some of what I tried to open up today. Okay? So if you want to be more aware, you can visit the Ministry of Education website. It provides statistics on a yearly basis. There is also an institution called University Grants Commission, which gives funds to colleges. It may not exist in a year or so, but it also has a website. So if you want to apply or to colleges and you want to know if they are trustworthy, if they are private or otherwise, you can go to that website to check, whether these are creditable institutions. Okay, so if there are no questions, we can call it a day then. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. I think ma'am explained every single thing so clearly कि हमारे कोई questions ही नहीं है. So give her a big round of applause. उन्होंने इतने अच्छे से सब कुछ समझाया है. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I would like to invite Dr. Nidhi Upadhyay, ma'am, and Dr. Supriya Ratogri, ma'am. So please come up on the stage for honoring our guest. Please, ma'am. Nidhi, ma'am, Supriya, ma'am. तालियां तो बजा दीजिए. बजाते रहिए. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now, I would like to thank Dr. Mansi, ma'am, for sharing such a valuable lecture about New Education Policy 2020. She told about institutional and policy context for expanding access and reforms in higher education in India. She discussed about systematic problems and improving quality. I also thanks to our VC sir, Professor Kashinath Jaina, Dean of Arts and Humanities, Dr. Anup Balloni, Assistant Registrar, Mr. Mohit Pokhriyal sir, IT cell, and all the HODs of the departments and faculties, and my dear fellow students. Okay. Thank you so much for all of you for coming here and attending the lecture. Thank you and have a nice day. And thank you once again. Thank you, ma'am, for sharing